Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michael Wieman, Vice President of Digital Commerce at ICP, and I'd like to welcome you to our panel, DAM, Please Meet Commerce, Commerce, Please Meet DAM. You two need to get to know each other better. It's a meaty subject with lots to discuss, and we want to get right into it. But first, I'd like to get a quick outline of the agenda and some introductions. We'll be spending time across 3 topics today: commerce content, the evolution of DAM to support it, and the state of play within the enterprise. We'll discuss these topics first and do our best to leave ample time for the Q&A at the end. We've got a fantastic group of experts on the panel today representing a variety of experience and expertise across both practitioners and suppliers. So without further ado, let's do some introductions with the group, if we can get everyone to join. And Liz, let's start with you, then Barbara, Brad, and David.
Absolutely. Hi, Michael. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I'm Lisbeth. I lead the commerce efforts for Nestle Canada. So for about over a decade, I'm specialized in the e-commerce space and in CPG. So prior to Nestle, I've worked with Coca-Cola. Also worked in mature e-com categories like baby, recreational biking, and furnishing. But prior to all of that, I started my career with advertising as a brand strategy planner, so very close to digital assets management space, and have seen the evolution over time. This is a fantastic space, and in fact, I have to mention this one point. I never thought that I would be talking about master data management, MDM, and DAM together in one meeting. So that's the space we have reached to. So very excited to be part of this amazing panel and looking forward for a great discussion.
Great. Barbara?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Barbara Jenny. I work at Coty, where I run all content platforms globally. I have been around content for, I think, 12 to 15 years, always around the work that brand teams do when they bring products to market. That was previously by Procter & Gamble as well. Looking forward to the conversation.
Great, I'll introduce myself too. So Brad Christus, I am the Global Director of Pre-Sales and Solution Engineering at Celtra. Prior to joining Celtra, I've had a few career stints at companies like OpenText, IBM, and kind of grew up through the digital asset management space, even when there was a company called Bulldog. We'll call it 19 years because 20 sounds way too much, right? So I've been at this conference for numerous years and numerous times, and it's always amazing to see the evolution of all the folks that attend and the technology that's here.
Thanks, Brad. David?
Yeah, and I'll go last. David Schwer, I lead product marketing here at Sitecore. I see some familiar names in the attendees because just like Brad, I feel like I've grown up with Henry Stewart as it's become this really cool organization. And I will just echo what Lisbeth said as well. I'm really excited that we're here, but we have come to a really interesting place with DAM. And if you're a DAM practitioner, I think this is so exciting because your world is only going to get more exciting. The opportunities, the career development, all those things. I think we'll touch on a lot of that stuff today, but it's going to be really exciting.
Thanks, panel. So I'm personally super excited to have this discussion today because of the value I think it can provide based on my past experience. Prior to joining ICP, I spent 5 years at Coca-Cola along with Lisbeth, and during this time led the strategy for Coca-Cola's enterprise DAM, as well as DAM's subsequent inclusion into what we termed a product content ecosystem, which was an integrated solution of DAM, PIM, syndication, and measurement tools to serve a variety of e-commerce channels. The topics we'll be speaking to today touch many of the high-level topics we encountered as we enhanced what was a very sophisticated DAM capability initially designed to manage and drive reuse of high-value marketing and media materials, and then to be included as a primary component of the e-commerce tech stack and to play a key role in the creation, storage, management, and distribution of product content globally. Ultimately, it's been a very successful solution, but there were many learnings and several iterations along the way as we considered DAM's role. And it would have been great to have had access to this group and their experience to consult during that time. So today I'm hoping we can collectively shorten the learning curve for any attendees that are being asked to consider or maybe in the middle of something similar. So let's jump into it. Let's move to the first topic, please. As the panel description states, the second slide, if we can, DAM is now safely embedded as the single source of truth for visual marketing and media materials in most companies and organizations. But for many, DAM is now also being asked to be considered to support commerce, which has its own content considerations, constituencies, and distribution outlets. So as we talk about the content, Liz, from your practitioner's perspective, can you talk about the increasing types, volume, and refresh of content required for e-commerce, where there are overlaps with conventional marketing content, what's unique to commerce, and then ultimately, who are those internal and external constituencies that are involved in its creation, management, and usage?
Yeah, absolutely. So in fact, for a manufacturer or a brand manufacturer today, when you talk about content, there is no traditional content, web content, or e-commerce content. The marketplace is digitized. As you all know that how things have transitioned, especially after COVID, post-COVID, things are like really ramped up and there is a digitization of the marketplace. So when I say that, I want to high level touch base how many different platforms or channels it's kind of proliferated to, right? The traditional stores expanded into omni players, so omni channels, then the pure plays, more pure plays are coming into play, which is end-to-end retail format, which is completely online. You have your intermediaries, which is Instacart. You have aggregators who works with dark store, or for example, like a last mile delivery, food delivery like DoorDash, your direct to commerce sites, your social commerce sites, and it's not ending there. Even the stores are converting into experience zones, so cool screens. So all these different channels need content. And when we talk about as a brand manufacturer, what we would have to provide content, which has to be consistent, which should be searchable, which should be like conversion-led content to all these different platforms. Now, the content in a high level, we look at basic content, gallery images, advanced content, optimized product imagery, and then when each of these channels individually would be looking at customized content as well. And based on their capability level, you have to further customize the content. And the requirement, again, for example, the image size is different, the specs is different, the way the translations comes into play. So ultimately, we're really talking about a base content getting adapted into thousands of different versions. And for each category, each customer, each retailer, you have to further customize them. And sometimes you have to do a one-time refresh for like 500 SKUs, right? And then in terms of approval process, so the internal people who are involved in the workflow. So then every time when there is a small change, even at a nutritional label, you have to get that whole workflow triggered and completed consistently, and then publish it in the respective site, sometimes even real time. Some retailers expecting real time. So this is the proliferation of change happened in the content space. And another aspect is like traditionally when we looked at it, it's always packaging leading into creative content, and pretty much that's about it. You're limiting it there, right? Like right now, if you create a piece of content, you have to really look at, based on each retailer, what's the background look like? We have to change the background. Some will accept the lozenge content, some will not accept the lozenge content, the sequencing of the images, the tagging of the images. So it is like a day-to-day, unless you have the right connectors, unless you have a lot of automation, it's a lot of manual work. And hence all these different systems play a very important role.
That's great perspective. Barbara, you bring a solution owner's perspective to the table. I'm curious to hear your take on both the content as well as the constituencies, maybe how the platforms are being leveraged by different functions, different groups within the enterprise that may be distinct from folks that may have leveraged those for a marketing capability.
Yes, thank you. And one thing that Liz said really resonates with me, right? This concept of the proliferation of everything, right? And wherever you look, there's just more. So in the light of that, it's good. I have a guiding principle that comes back to we have more and more virtual experiences that need to substitute a physical brand experience. And the more you have that, the more expectations is being put on the content that needs to deliver this virtual experience, right? So there is always more and new diversified content that is required. If you're thinking of, TikTok, live shopping, the virtual try-on experiences, Liz, you mentioned them all, right? The need for new and differentiated content just needs to make sure that you need to have very solid internal processes to help bring that need from the kind of end state where it is up to the resources that are in charge of the content creation, right? Because the fact that there is new and differentiated content that's needed is not incredibly new, right? But you need to just make sure that there is a process that better informs the people that are in charge of the content creation and embed that in the, for the lack of a better word, content briefs, right? When you create new campaign material, it is very important for the people who are in charge of that they are fully aware of what's required to really drive net revenue at the end. So, and as we're speaking about constituents, right, I think in Coty, as there has been a bigger focus on driving that. I pretty much see it as a situation of a new kid on the block, our D2C merchandising team, right? And they come with big demands and new demands as well, right? So there is this dynamic going on where we're still having to, work together to kind of like help define and elevate that need. So that all the brand teams feel equipped and empowered to support these demands, right? So yeah, definitely that has given a bit more of a shake up in terms of kind of like the traditional way of how you could think about the content creation process. Maybe one thing just to mention as well around the burn rate, right? So I think commerce has a much higher burn rate on content, which also creates the stress, right? In terms of understanding how in your organization you want to manage that, because traditionally in a brand manufacturer, there is a focus to really drive newness and innovation and making sure that there is capacity and capability in-house to really support the brand teams to take care of their entirety of their portfolio on a going basis, right? And make sure that the organization and the processes are set up to do. It's not necessarily it's not a system thing, right? It's about making sure that as a company, you're set up for success to deliver that increased needs, right? Because if you don't, then it just creates a lot of stress on the existing processes you have in place.
Yeah, that's great perspective, Barbara. Brad, I know Celtra has a focus on e-commerce content, especially the production of it at scale. So what perspective would you like to share specifically around the type of content, the volume, the refresh, and then who are the key users of your solution? Where are you finding them sitting within the enterprise?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to reiterate what everybody else has said is there's a giant content gap, right? And it's more and more and more and now, right? Having our eyeballs on many pieces of glass through many channels, right? I think content staleness is kind of a challenge, right? And conversion rates with e-commerce teams, right, are kind of how they live. And having that content refresh is kind of massive to do so, right? I would say from a Celtra perspective, we have creative automation that can scale out content based on localization, personalization, and things like that. But I would say just as a general kind of architectural solution to the point what Elizabeth was making, we're talking about MRM systems and PIM systems, talking to DAM systems that are talking to e-commerce systems that are automating these things faster and faster, and arguably using artificial intelligence and machine learning to go faster, right? And knowing those audiences and personas to do so. So I would say that the folks that are using it, right, are creative directors to create the cool and neat content, but then pushing that out and making decisions based on the dynamic content that gets created, right? And then the persona-based targeting that some of the e-commerce folks uses. It's definitely a little bit of a challenge, but there is, again, to just reiterate what everybody else is saying, it's just more, and you got to get the attention of the eyeballs on whatever platform, on whatever piece of glass, regardless, even if it's physical or digital, like Elizabeth, you said about DoorDash and stuff like that. It's crazy.
And Michael, if I can add one just quick layer to this too, I think that there's a depth to the problem, which is commerce use cases. I think probably for what a lot of people heard is we're focused on B2C commerce and 3D models and everything, but every business, by the way, has a commerce need, whether you know it or not. There's B2C commerce, B2B style commerce that all has its own unique variations to it. But then think about order management for commerce and how fast that changes out when you're trying to manage if you have like distribution or distributed stores that you have to keep catalogs up to date, marketplaces, et cetera. But I do want to point out there was a comment in the chat that needs to be said here. APIs, how you flow content, that's the answer here. We'll get into that a little bit later, but automation APIs, just want to call out Michelle's comment in the chat because that's so key to what we're talking about.
Yeah, great ad. All right, well, let's shift gears and switch into the second topic. Talk about DAM's evolution. David, how has DAM evolved to meet a lot of the content considerations that we're talking about here? Specifically, I'm thinking about various pieces of functionality and capability, such as facilitating asset creation and workflow, new asset types, storing product information, segmenting local versus global content, presenting it through integrated content experiences, external syndication services. I'm sure there are many, many more. So I'll turn it over to you to let us know.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. And I think this is kind of an extension of what I was talking about. There's just so many use cases now. And the point that I think is really worth diving into here is DAM is more than just storing assets, right? Like everybody here that has to sit in an existing technology ecosystem. But the reality is DAM now really does facilitate creation and workflows. Those are capabilities that are just native to a DAM now, and I think that that's really exciting because as a kind of a DAM librarian, you have a much greater control over upstream processes. But then now, this gets back to automation API, how that content flows out of the DAM, because what you're really trying to solve for is content-driven commerce here, right? Because that's what people want. When I say people, it's any buyer, whether that's a consumer or a business. The way you reduce anxiety or friction of a purchase is having a better content experience. And I think DAM is so central to that. And that's where you get into, managing global and local content, right? Because you want to have the variations, but you want to keep them up to date. You want to be able to easily swap things in and out. By the way, as products become available or unavailable, be able to swap that out as well. And so I think we're seeing what a DAM can be is actually grow into the promise, which was really that single content hub from which you can, really have a great brand experience. So I'll turn it back over to you, Michael, because you might have some more to add on that.
Actually, I wanted to turn it over to Brad really quickly and talk about the potential integrations with the DAM. Obviously, Brad Seltzer is not part and parcel a DAM. I'm sure it's got some DAM capabilities within it. How do you find that you're integrating with the DAM upstream, downstream, both, and then anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, no, I'll just kind of parlay on to David's comment, right? So, a DAM is no longer a repository of stuff, right? It's, if your content is not in motion, right, it's not working, right? It's not working for your organization. So again, kind of that API question of how do you orchestrate all of this content and govern this content from brand governance to whatever the use case. And again, orchestration and APIs play a huge role in all of that stuff, right? From a Seltzer perspective, right, we kind of sit in between the layer, right, creating multiple variants, different, persona-based pieces of content from that kind of mezzanine content file that's curated within inside the DAM. But again, we're kind of that gateway of moving stuff and creating content at volumes around those things. So we see digital asset management system as the source of the truth, period, right? Everything should be curated and aggregated inside of there. And then how you distribute those to your e-com platforms or how you integrate into your PIM systems or MRM systems, all of that needs to be orchestrated, right, with less friction around that. So I would say in typical use cases, right, we'll get those kind of mezzanine files, we'll scale those out, and then we'll put those back in as child assets where they worked from a global to local campaign, right? And then we'll put data around there, right? Being very data-driven first around that stuff, just to give more insights. What worked, what didn't? How do I monetize things and repurpose those things across different channels and stuff like that? So yeah.
Okay. Well, we talked a lot about where DAM has evolved. David, I'm curious if you feel like there are areas that DAM just doesn't play right now and that it's best suited for, again, upstream or downstream integrations with maybe a fit for purpose application that simply doesn't look like it fits squarely within the evolving DAM universe.
I think it's a great question. And, especially when it comes to commerce, what I don't want to do is say that DAM can be everything to everyone. And I think, for example, I don't represent a PIM vendor. Sitecore, we don't have a PIM in our repository. Like, we think of content management systems, we think of e-commerce, those are natural extensions. But a PIM is probably still a place you would put some of that deep content, because I still think where we are today, digital asset management really is for kind of end content consumption, and really should be kind of like this layer of, I kind of phrase it as the marketing content behind information. So I think, DIM is something, the PIM is something you certainly still want to complement your DAM implementation.
Yeah, Michael, I really like to add a layer here, because, it's very interesting area. So, like, having sat through many RFPs over time in my career, one thing I have noticed is most of the time the DAM a particular brand manufacturer who is using is very comfortable with, right? Because it stayed over time in the company, and any change management is always a tough thing to do. But what happens is, if the DAM leads can actually have the right conversation with the brand all the time, and then understand what exactly that change and how we can customize it and bring that innovation back to the engineers, and then adjust it, just like how you said, the connectors, how it works and how it's actually can provide real-time data. The changes, every brand is moving towards having a data science team. So how the current DAM can play and evolve with the need of the client, because there is no off-the-shelf options available in the market for any brands for that matter. Like, it's always customization. So if you're already in the company, this can be a great opportunity for you to kind of listen and kind of change and be proactive, because most of the time it never comes through. Like, usually something which is installed, after that you will have a maintenance agency who would be coming and supporting the brand manufacturer. Then eventually the platform is not working, and then the brand would be looking at an alternate option. So if you can consistently keep getting that feedback and bringing that back to your internal engineers and kind of customize it, that's like a good way for you to kind of learn what's happening in the market, at the same time stay in that business and in that option. So
great. Barbara, would you like to add anything in?
I'm just nodding my head, right? So absolutely. I think in order to keep any kind of ecosystem clean, you just need to keep working on it, right? You need to do if you imagine it, this is like a garden, right? You need to do some weeding and make sure that the right things kind of flourish and can grow. This making sure that you're there in the conversation and help define not only what's possible, but also just making sure that things stay somewhat up to date, right? So the commerce channels are just ever evolving, and you need to be ready to walk. I'm not going to say doing in lockstep is very hard, right? But just making sure that you have a method of staying up to date and making sure that emerging needs are not just something that happens somewhere, but that really can become part of your ecosystem. That will help everybody, all the users and the creators and everybody that engages with the DAM ecosystem to stay there, right? So yeah, this makes a very good point there.
Yeah, good build. Great. Well, if we don't have anything in terms of DAM in the abstract, let's talk a little bit more about DAM and practical application in the enterprise. So state of play, if we can move on to topic number 3. So again, we've discussed the DAM is very capable of supporting e-commerce now. It's evolved to suit many of our use cases. And we've also talked a little bit about the advantages that it can bring. In my personal experience, though, the solutions you might ideally design from scratch can be very different than the solutions you may already have in place and which you're required to operate and iterate on. I've got a colleague that's fond of saying form follows function, but function follows purpose. And practitioning considerations and enterprise drivers often have a significant influence on the solutions that we ultimately select. Barbara, I'd like to hear from you. Where does DAM fit within your current commerce stack and your content platforms, if at all? And if you are leveraging a DAM for that purpose, is there one enterprise DAM, or are there several depending on the function, the content, the channel?
Yeah, so I think for all intents and purposes, Kuti has some great advantages because it is has been able to leapfrog some of kind of like the early, we don't necessarily have a lot of legacy system in this space. So we have, I would think, a fairly streamlined setup. We have a central DAM that supports our go-to-market process for all our global brands. And then we have a separate setup for our, like the more traditional handling of traditional advertising, our TV spot stuff. And since Coty is, has embarked on this digital commerce journey fairly kind of like recently, when that happened, it was decided to keep the original DAM separate from the new tech stack. And that was done purely to be able to focus and deliver against the specific content needs that is needed for D2C to really support the D2C business growth, which is, velocity and variety. So that being said, though, right, the DAMs isn't being ignored. It aliments that tech stack, we're actually going through our PIM. So our DAM feeds into the PIM, and then from there that sends out into our new digital commerce foundation setup that we have. And if we're thinking about other solutions, right, it comes back to what we've said before. Commerce has continuous evolving new ways of needing to engage with content and sharing and distributing content. But there is also this opportunity that in today's landscape, there is other content creation opportunities, right? So like TikTok, this mashup content essentially comes to mind for me. And one of the considerations that we have is to understand how do we actually want to connect or not connect into our content ecosystem. Because if you do connect, then you, in ideal case, you'd have an endless stream of content that others create for you, right? Self-refreshing content. In the worst case, that could go where you have a lot of content that is meaningless. It's just clutter, and it even dilutes your brand messaging. So the whole way of how you manage the broader ecosystem where other people create content about your brands, that is definitely something we need to still work towards understanding how exactly we want to manage that.
Great, Liz. I know you have a variety of experiences across several companies that each took different approaches to the inclusion of DAM within the commerce stack. I'm curious if you can share a little bit more about the breadth of your experience in those types of approaches. What other solutions, content creation to syndication platforms that you may have used to provide DAM type of capabilities for content, for commerce content, instead of or in addition to a DAM.
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. So what happened is today, most of the brands, we kind of took a step back and really going back to the drawing board. And it all starts with these 4 pillars. I'm sure all of you are familiar with this, but I just want to repeat it. Starting with people, like the marketplace change. So who are those stakeholders, how things are changing? The next step would be the information. So what kind of information needs to go, and what are those important information which needs to get syndicated? And then the third step or the pillar would be the processes. So the business processes, how the business processes are getting evolved, and what are those streamlining. So you have to really define your governance and what is that processes. Now, once you have your people, information, and processes kind of defined, that is when you can actually really talk about your tech stack. And one thing I've noticed across my peers, it's just that the amount of work and the amount of requirement is so huge that we are looking at simplifying things. Unfortunately, big CPG companies always have multiple duplicate platforms and systems and legacy systems staying in the company. So everyone is really looking at simplifying it and how easy we can actually get things faster. There are targets saying that, okay, if you want to set up a new content, should come down from say 20 days to 48 hours, 1 day. That's the level of speed at which you have to kind of keep moving. And if you have to do that, you cannot afford to have 5 different tech errors because of the connectors, and it's not moving from one point to another. The workflow is getting affected. There are iterations going on, so it's just not going to make things easier. So once you define your business processes, which platform can simplify it all as much as we can, so that we get the content out faster, and a constant refresh ask, right? Like retailers they do have scorecards now, quality scorecards. So we have to kind of make sure that we matches with their scorecard to stay ahead in terms of content quality. So which means the content refresh can come as often as probably every month. And whenever we do a refresh, it's not one SKU, two SKU. We are doing a refresh for like 500 SKUs, 550 SKUs. So tech stack is so critical, something which can have like low maintenance, easy user interface, and fast application is the key. And ultimately, it'll all come back to that first point, which is the people. Like if people are happy and you implemented a solution which is easier, and your entire change management protocol has actually worked for good in an overall way, then you're actually home. Otherwise, you're again going back to the drawing board, and you're again going through the same process. And again, you have to kind of match with the global solutions versus local solutions, what works with your retailer, what not works with your retailer. So there are so many different aspects to it. So that's answering the first part of the question. The second is, interestingly, there are, I'm sure all of you are familiar with this, but there are two main players right now in North America for sure, who kind of talked about experience management platform, which means a solution which is an integrated solution of MDM, master data management, PIM, product information management, DAM, digital assets management, and CRM, so CRM solution. So overall, like, these experience management platforms are kind of coming forward and offering the brands, okay, why do you have to go to like 10 different places? You have this one unified solution, one in, one out, very clean workflows, easy integration. It also kind of backward integrated to say supply chain as well. Like, so your order management is taken care of. So you have this package where this particular experience management platform can syndicate some things like real time, of course. If the retailers are providing the API, real time syndication is possible. And then you have this one-time solution. And one limitation I have noticed, and of course, we still need to have the traditional DAM, is mainly because of the file formats. Because some of the file formats, especially the artworks and some font sizes, and some of these file formats, many of these experience platforms are unable to archive or tag or save. Hence, mostly we are looking at solutions which are like the experience management platform plus a traditional DAM. So DAM is still in the picture, but it's kind of, the experience management platforms are working through majority of the DAM advantages and areas, but still have some limitations. So these are some new things are kind of coming into the play. And ultimately, I can confidently say it's all about ease of use, clean data pull, real time, good analytics, and good tagging, good cataloging. So that's what the manufacturers are looking for.
Great, thank you. David, I'm sure from a supplier's perspective, you've got a point of view on DAM and the advantages, and again, potentially where you feel like maybe some other solutions are better suited per enterprise driver.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I just want to build on something that Elizabeth said about kind of platforms, and what I think I would want this group to take away is, your DAM has to be able to stand on its own as an independent solution. Like, it really should be this great content hub. In my opinion, you should have, very clean entry via upstream workflows, very clean downstream delivery of content into all of your channels. I was running a workshop earlier this week, and I think most people are on between 15 and 25 different channels, like depending on how you count channels. Like, it's incredible. But there's this other element to it, that a DAM really does stop in certain places, and as a part of that, you need to have sort of what I'm starting to see is called a composable architecture, right, where you can kind of go in and put things together, and it goes back to that API capabilities. But I think syndication is something that DAM probably stops before then. You certainly have public links that you can put out into syndication platforms and everything, but that would be a place where, yeah, let's go get somebody to help us do that. On the content creation standpoint, I'm from a dam perspective, I'm really focused on the workflows, but then you have all those elements that Brad was talking about earlier of really expanding and scaling your content creation. And I'm not sure that a dam is ideal for that because you have so many nuances to different types of content. You need some best of breed players that you can really play with, whereas, those final content pieces should stay in the dam. So Brad, I hope I've set you up well there to take it from me.
Yes, good setup. No, I mean, again, to what everybody's been saying, right, is that I don't think there's a perfect solution for any enterprise, right? There's lots of players out there that offer different things and different, depending on what role you're playing and what markets you're playing in. If it's B2B, B2C, if it's retail, if it's, regardless of where it is, right? It's just, I think it's more than just one source of the truth, right? I used to joke when I was working at other places. It's not, do you have a dam? It's how many do you have and do you know where they are? Because you end up creating digital islands all over the place. And how do you aggregate and find that source of the truth? And in some instances, there's, reason why you have one over here and there's a reason why you have one over there. So to your point of, I think you said that, I don't know if it was configurable or componentized architecture, right? Finding the right solution that fits with you, kind of what Elizabeth said is people first, right? I've seen the coolest things in the world that were over-architected and nobody used because user adoption was rough, right? Where if you kind of outline the workflow of what folks need it for, regardless of where it is, and kind of build out that whole digital supply chain, it's much more effective. So again, it's kind of a little bit of a choose your own adventure based on, where folks are at in their journey. But there's lots of folks that can solve those things. So.
Thanks, Brad. Panel, if you don't have anything else to throw into the mix here for this topic, we'll take it over to some Q&A. Everyone good with that? Okay, great. Let's go to first question. Can brands on the call share some experiences around how dam and commerce operations have had to change and evolve to meet the new business needs and pressures? Barbara or Liz, you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, I think for us, there are currently kind of like two distinct different organizations, two distinct different teams. But one of the things that we see happening is that for commerce, we really want to be more in-sourced. And for dam operations, you can kind of like choose because it is more established, right? In terms of lifecycle management for assets and all that stuff. So dam has been around longer and the whole kind of the variety of content and the velocity needed lends itself to really have more in-house capabilities. So yeah, that's my take.
Liz, would you like to comment at all?
Yeah, do you mind repeating the question, Michael? Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. It's can brands on the call share some experience around dam and commerce operations and how you've had to change and evolve to meet the new business needs and pressures?
Yeah, so yeah, just how I was talking about, like, we still keep our traditional dam workflows as is. We are not changing that because we do not want to disturb the existing processes, because some of those areas where it is important for us to especially when you work with really big company, the stakeholders are huge, the workflows have been set for years, changing that can really mess things up. So we have to kind of work around the spectrum so that so the existing dam stays as is, but at the same time, all these new and evolving content requirement, dynamic content creation. So we kind of support it using probably not another dam, just like how I was mentioning about some experience management platforms and other platforms which are PIM probably providing us supported dam. So we cannot afford to have multiple dams because it's not necessarily helping us with the syndication, many of the tools, unfortunately. But then these additional tools kind of complement the traditional dam and then taking the main role of syndication and publishing and dynamic content creation. So dam still exists, but at the same time lacks a lot of, that fluid, easy connection. More, like majority of the other platforms, the data flow is relatively less complicated compared to the way that dam workflows or approval. So it's a little archaic. I mean, so I obviously don't want to talk about the name of the platforms, but I just wanted to like high level mention that most of the new platforms, especially SaaS applications which are coming up, they are all very lightweight, easy to use compared to the traditional strong platforms. So probably leave it at that.
No, that's a great answer. Let's go to the next one that got upvoted
Hey,
here.
Michael, can I add one thing on that? Just because like that is what Sitecore does, is DAM and commerce. It's getting people on the workflow. So I'll just say what Elizabeth said is, modern DAM and commerce teams just get on the same workflow to approve content, review content, change behavior to actually approve and review stuff. That's kind of the change management that we see a lot of teams have to go through.
I absolutely second that. I think if you want to think about velocity, doing that piece of work in a tool is just going to be it unlocks so much speed. And that's what you need for commerce.
Great. I will move on to the next one that got upvoted here. How would you overcome the challenge when DAM and commerce ultimate ownership aren't aligned at the C-suite level? My assumption is we may have seen this across both brand and supplier. So who'd like to take this first?
I'm happy to take the first step, and then Elizabeth and Barbara jump in here. But I think the point is commerce, in the DAM ownership, they have to come around a single concept of content-driven commerce. And there's a lot of statistics out there about how do you reduce anxiety. And the reason why I keep bringing up that how do you reduce purchase anxiety, that's what's going to spike your commerce sales. And that's how you're going to get aligned at that C-suite level. And I think for DAM owners, it really is understanding how fast the commerce world works. So, you do have to accept that when you get into that space, it is a different game fundamentally than other aspects of go-to-market.
Yeah, so just like how I was saying that most of the brands are now going back to the drawing board, but obviously the change is not quick. Having said that, one good thing happened, post-COVID. In the past, we have to always go convince the C-suite or the leadership to kind of, understand what's happening, but that's changed completely. Everyone is kind of on board now, so that resistance reduced a lot to start with. So it's not necessarily just commerce and DAM, it's the entire tech infrastructure for the company. Like the digitization of the marketplace is happening, the retailers are changing their back end, the way they are working is different. So not necessarily just, a particular part of the entire infrastructure, it's just the overall infrastructure. And many companies are looking at having this leadership role of a brand experience leader or a technology lead to kind of create that architecture for the company. So that is a really interesting change I'm seeing in the CPG industry. So that person can kind of own it. So therefore, the stakeholder management or that issue can be reduced, or a council is getting formed to kind of tackle this. So these are the only two ways you can definitely get to that success point. If you stay in multiple places, the duplication still exists, and you will never get to that speed or cost optimization for that matter.
Would anyone else like to comment, Barbara?
2 cents from me. I think in most companies, net revenue trumps. So that's where commerce often actually starts just having the bigger stick. So, it's part of the dynamic that happens, right? So if they're not aligned, I'm gonna know on who I would put my bet.